All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Bob Arum says that Terence Crawford is dispensable. As a result, and he did this in answering a question about what he was going to do for boxing moving forward under this pandemic and the idea of having people fight, having fighters fight with no crowds. So, let's talk about that. And why specifically Bob Arum said Terence Crawford is dispensable if he don't get with the program. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about the relationship between Bob Arum and Terence Crawford. Bob Arum is one of the founders of Top Rank. I'm not quite sure if he's the founder or one of the founders or what, because it used to actually be was founded by Herbert Muhammad, and a member of the Nation of Islam when Muhammad Ali was still fighting in the late 1960s. But Bob Arum took over the company eventually, and it's one of the biggest promotional companies and one of the most successful promotional companies in boxing over the last 50 years. Bob Arum has been an absolute mainstay in the sport of boxing since he first walked on the scene. Terence Crawford is a fighter that fights for Bob Arum. He is the WBO welterweight champion of the world. In my opinion, he's the number one fighter in the world, pound for pound, and he fights with Top Rank. Now, there has been, of course, we know that there is an issue with fights being able to be put on because we are currently in a pandemic. And one of the solutions that is being passed around or discussed by promoters is the idea that they could still put on boxing matches, but those boxing matches would be staged in rooms where there were no fans. So according to Bob Arum, the idea that Bob Arum is looking at is, making sure that the fighters are both tested for the virus, the judges are tested for the virus, the referee is tested for the virus, and also that there's maintain social distancing for everybody outside of the ring, in hopes that they can put on some type of product that would be appealing to boxing fans. Now, why would they want to do that? And this is very important to discuss when talking about what Bob Arum has to say about Terence Crawford. The reason why they want to do that is so that they can stay in business. Because if they do not put on some fights, then they don't have any income. And eventually, you know how that goes. You go too long without any sources of income and your business gets shut down. You start off with having to furlough people, and then eventually you have to furlough more people. Sometimes you just might have to just lay off people. So it's a really tough situation for Bob Arum. It's a tough situation for Golden Boy Promotions, tough situation for Matchroom, tough situation for the PBC main events. Everybody involved, man. It's tough. So they're trying to figure out how you can go about having these fights. Now, Bob Arum is a proponent of doing this, putting on fights on ESPN with no crowds. Terence Crawford, on the other hand, was asked whether or not he would be willing to have a fight without a crowd. His response was, yeah, he would be willing to do it, but they're going to have to pay him more money. And the reason why he said that was that his particular arrangement at his level, this is what he said, at his level, he gets paid he gets a percentage of the gate. The amount of the people that come in help to pay his salary. Similar to what happened, and that something to verify that against is when Bob Arum talked about Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder fight and said how hard that fight would be to get made in front of without a crowd, because of the gate. The gate for that fight really did contribute significantly to the pay of both of the fighters. So, that is the reason why Terence Crawford says that Terence Crawford, he didn't say that he wouldn't do it. He said that they're going to have to pay him more money. Now, what Bob Arum was asked, about Terence Crawford, and said well, but what if Terence Crawford doesn't want to fight in front of crowds? And he said, well, hey, nobody's indispensable. And, next man up. You know what I mean? Like, if he doesn't want to do it, that's fine. I've got another fighter that'll do it. And if he doesn't want to do it and I'm not paying him any more money than he would be getting, I'm putting words in his mouth. Hey, man, you can sit there and spin, homie. You can sit there and spin. It's up to you whether or not you want to make the money or not. But if you don't want to fight, I can't force you, but I'm also not going to pay you, and I'm not going to go bankrupt for you. Now, here's my take on the particular scenario. That Bob Arum is right. And Terence Crawford is wrong, Terence Crawford, excuse me. Bob Arum is right and Terence Crawford is right. Terence Crawford says, hey, man, if your agreement is with me that I'm going to get a piece of the gate, and we were anticipating in this agreement that there would always be people that were there. Hey, man, I'm not going to fight for, I don't know what percentage of that is. If he's making $3 million a fight, he's like, look, man, I'm not going to get out there and fight for, I don't know, $1 million. What would they be? Whatever Bob Arum would be paying him just strictly off of the, strictly off the licensing fee, I assume, from the network that would air that fight. That seems like, if Terence Crawford has the money in his bank and the time to sit it out and rest his body and do all that, then hey, man, good for him, man. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But Bob Arum, on the other hand, hey, man, what is he supposed to do? If he's in a scenario where he can't charge people to come in, then, he just can't pay the money in the, that was stipulated in the contract. And it actually might be a good time for Terence Crawford, right? Because if Terence Crawford, I'm skipping a little bit ahead to the resolution that could come about, but Terence Crawford, I understand 100% where he's coming from. He has an expectation of earnings for the times that he's fighting. And if he doesn't get paid that, he doesn't want to acquiesce to it. He's going to have to sit out. Bob Arum I don't think Bob Arum has ever really been a tremendous advocate for Terence Crawford, is when you compare the way that he treats, well, at least the way that he talks about Terence Crawford versus the way he talks about other fighters. But hey, man, the dude's got to stay in business. Now, the smart thing I would think for Terence Crawford, though, is to take this as an opportunity, right? Bob Arum, is a situation where, what better time to renegotiate a contract with somebody than when they really need you, right? When this whole situation has changed. He could sit down and say, hey, Bob, yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, I don't have a problem fighting in front of fighting in front of a crowd, fighting where there's no crowd there. And hey, if it's an acceptable fight, depending on the money that you're going to pay me, I would take the fight. If you're going to give him some soft touch dude that he knows he's going to run through in an hour, run through in a round or two, hey, why not? Go ahead and beat him up. That's what, by the way, that seems like what Terence Crawford's been doing. But anyway, I couldn't resist that jive. But if he gives him a soft touch, he's just going to go out there and treat it like a big exhibition fight. Then hey, man, cool. But at the same time, I need those specifications. I need I need this particular arrangement documented in my agreement. And since we're in the middle of doing this, hey, there's a couple other things I would like to change in my arrangement. When in exchange for doing this now, what will you give me on the back end? When it comes back, can I get a percentage higher point when the gate when we are able to fight in front of people? Eventually, we believe that we will be able to. So, hey, how about if you give me, an extra percentage point or two on the back or on the fights that take place when the crowds come. So in exchange for me giving up something now, you give me something later. And it could be a real good opportunity for Terence Crawford to fix whatever it is that he may or may not like that's in the current agreement that he has. And it could be a way that he could come out where both guys could come out ahead in that scenario, where Bob Arum gets what he needs during the time that he needs it, because Bob Arum is going to need it, or at least Top Rank is going to need it. They need these cards on ESPN and need the revenue for their company, and having Terence Crawford be a guy that's fighting on ESPN during the middle of this could get tremendous ratings out of ESPN for a live event. And the chances are that the live events are going to come back from boxing quicker than it would for other sports because there's only two guys really involved in it. You know what I mean? You can test two guys, what is it? 1, 2, you literally could have that fight and not have over 10 people that are really involved in the event even present, between the two fighters, the trainers, the judges, the state commission, the commission people that are there. You should be able to have that event take place, with a lot less people than you would for, say, a basketball game or a football game or a track event or, definitely like NASCAR and things like that. So there is a possibility that they could make that happen sooner than other sports, and have a really good fighter like Terence Crawford could get a lot of people's interest and focus on that. But, so maybe in exchange for that, they would be willing to give up something on the back end. I certainly hope that we do get fights in studio with no crowds there. I don't mind that at all. It'll be a little bit funny, similar to like watching. I watched a television show on HBO that is usually like a studio with a studio audience. And it's just funny, like when there's nobody laughing at the punchlines, the jokes seem a lot less funny. Maybe that would be the case with boxing, that, if you didn't hear the crowd screaming, the punches might seem a little less significant. But I don't think so, because I watch boxing, thank you HBO, I watch boxing without the sound on all the time. So I am positive that it would be a good experience. But anyway, it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comments section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.